Hello, everyone. Hello, Johnny. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of Lens this evening. Um, Let me just set this up. All right. Our next guest today is Jonny Jensen, a designer who began his creative journey at BYU, where he studied industrial design. While a student at BYU, he saw his first off campus action with Hewlett Packard, which led him to a formative experience as an intern with Astro Studios, working firsthand with their world class team. Always interested in footwear, Johnny returned to Salt Lake City, taking a role with the design studio Modaliti. I don't know if I'm saying that right, Johnny. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, Working in soft goods and specializing in footwear. After exploring, consulting, and teaching as an assistant professor at the University of Utah, Johnny committed fully to the footwear space at Reebok, where you're currently working as a senior designer in sports performance. In the spring of 2019, Johnny was enlisted for a short-term residency at the Adidas Creator Farm in Brooklyn, New York, where he supported design efforts for the future of Adidas basketball and running. Other notable projects include the Nano X, the Legacy Lifter 1 and 2, and JJ Watt 1, 2, and 3. Johnny loves the possibilities of design, the opportunity to consistently improve his craft, and he finds fulfillment in the struggle to find harmony and elegance in product creation. Johnny, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. For those who are tuning in, thank you so much for being a part of Lens. Just a couple of announcements. If you are watching today's session, I highly encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A section of this webinar. And also, number two, if you haven't noticed, I'm not wearing my hat. All right, so just kind of giving my hair some oxygen. So other than that, I think we are set to go. This session is being recorded, so this conversation with Johnny will be posted on our YouTube channel at a much later date. For those who missed it, they can reference the video. So Johnny, I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to take over and share your screen.
Great. Am I coming through okay with audio?
You look good, yeah.
All right, cool. First off, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. It's great to have a chance to talk design. And thank you for all this work that you're doing and for including us all in the community here with Lens. And so yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. When I was invited to share, man, so many different thoughts came to mind about what might be worthwhile. And so we're going to kind of jump around a little bit, actually. And I guess in a way that is the designer life, is to jump from one thing to another. So we'll do a little bit about that, a little bit of that. And so I titled this just Talking Shop because we are going to be shifting around, and that kind of encapsulates what I'll share today. So Hector did a great job. I mean, he shared a little bit of my history, a little bit about a little introduction about me. So I won't delve much more into that. The first thing I wanted to talk about was I just kind of wanted to share the things that are inspiring me. I know that I'm here to share my perspective and share my view on design and the things that I do professionally, but out the gate, I just wanted to talk about some of the things that inspire me, the perspectives and inspirations that I've been looking to recently, and wanted to share those with you guys. Then we'll just talk about a little project that I've been working on, 25 tips for the young and motivated designer. Then we'll talk shoes, and then we'll wrap it up. So the first thing I wanted to do is just share some of the things that have really been inspiring me, some books that I've read recently or have reread recently, and that I think any designer would find really compelling and motivating. And so these are three books that I've been looking to over the course of the years. Leonardo Da Vinci, this book's a little bit newer, so I haven't been looking to it for as long as the others. But all three of these books I just find super motivating as a designer. And I kind of just wrote beneath these books the things that they kind of stand for. For Leonardo da Vinci, the wonder of questioning. I didn't know this before, but Leonardo, more than an artist, I see him as a designer, as a thinker, as a questioner, as a curious person. Very inspiring. Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. The Power of Meaning. I think that Patagonia, more than any other brand, maybe one of the few brands that truly has a claim to standing for sustainability in the environment. They have the track record to truly stand and make an honest claim to believing and protecting our environment and being sustainable as a brand. Apart from that, is also they delve into their design values. They talk about their design ethos. So motivating, so inspiring. So I also recommend Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard. And then also Steve Jobs. This is probably the most popular of the three books here. The Influence of Excellence. I find Steve Jobs to be extremely motivating. His doggedness, his desire to create something special and unique, and his willingness to always put in everything that he had. So I've just been looking at these books recently, and so I wanted to highlight those, and hopefully if there's some readers out there, if you haven't had a chance, these are definitely worth checking out. Something else that's been bouncing around in my mind recently is this quote that I wanted to share with everybody. This is a book about humility and leadership. It's called Humilitas. But I think that this quote is applicable not just to leaders, but to designers. And so I'll just read it here with you guys. Most leaders are to some extent idealists. They have a desire for things to be different, to be better. Thus, the leader lives all the time with a discrepancy between the world that she wants and wants others to inhabit and the world she and others actually do inhabit. Psychologists call this condition cognitive dissonance. There is a discord between reality and the ideal. Most people deal with the cognitive dissonance fairly effectively simply by choosing to look away from the ideal. They come to tolerate the reality by avoiding the evidence. By filtering the data they receive, they fabricate a world in which the discrepancy is less. The leader, however, is motivated by desire to hold on to the ideal. Indeed, it is the ideal that drives her. Accordingly, she commits herself to a journey that will inevitably lead her into a dissonance between the reality and the ideal, a tension that she refuses until she gives up leading to deny or suppress. So this was by Simon Walker of Oxford University, again in the book Humilitas. And I think that this is so important for designers. I think that this idea of embracing that dissonance is really important. I find that the creative life and the fight for beautiful product can be a lonely path. And I think that part of that is because as designers, we often refuse to look away from the ideal. To look away from the ideal is to fill the world with mediocre product, and none of us want to do that. So this quote has been really inspiring to me, and I've thought about it a lot since I came across it, and I wanted to share that with you guys because I think that you might find it motivating and inspiring as well. So as Hector said, I had a chance last year to work with the Adidas Creator Farm in Brooklyn. I was there for 3 months, and I wanted to share some of the things that stuck with me from my time there. When I presented my experience back with my team at Reebok, I shared some of the quotes, some of the things that were shared with me by that team that I thought was important to remember. And one of the things that was said to me was, I saw this and I thought it might inspire you. And that sounds like a simple thing to say, but you can see that it's affected me because that's the first thing that wanted to share with you guys is things that have inspired me. To share the inspiring, I think, is an invitation to talk. It's almost all as well like showing trust in somebody to say, I hope that this inspires you. And one day while I was sketching and working on a project, Mark came by and he was flipping through some of my sketches. And he came back a few hours later and he said, hey, I saw this and I thought it might inspire you. And so that was meaningful to me because it meant that he saw what I was working on, and his wheels started turning. The things that he saw me working on got his wheels turning, and so he brought something back to contribute. This made me also think about mentorship, and that's something that will come up a little bit later in the presentation. But mentorship's a big part of learning. I think that we can both be a mentor and find mentors at all times in our careers. It just depends on where we're at. There's always someone that is probably trying to follow in our footsteps, and there's also others out there who have done what we're hoping to do. And so seeking inspiration, sharing inspiration, looking to be a mentor, and looking for mentors is, I think, a really valuable thing. And that's something that I took from my experience at the farm. Another thing I wanted to share that was shared with me at the farm was a comment that Jean Khalif often made. He always would say, and I don't know if this is something that he was saying outside the time that I was there, but I heard him say it a few times and it stuck with me, is I don't want to be precious about it. This stuck with me because I think that as designers, we have a tendency, and I'm guilty of it many times, is we like to fall in love with our work. We like to fall in love with our ideas. We put a sketch down and we fall in love with the sketch. And the problem with this, and the thing that Jean was alluding to, I think, was we don't want to be precious about these things. We don't want to fall in love with our sketches. We want to disconnect because we want to be open to explore. We want to be open to create. And sometimes when we fall in love with an idea or become precious about an idea, that can keep us from exploring other better ideas. So I find it motivating. This actually links with something that I learned. I'm pretty sure I learned this from Spencer Nugent back in school. He took a sketch that was really beautiful and he crumbled it up and threw it in the trash. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with this idea, to be willing to throw out our work, trusting that we can do it better. And so I really liked this comment and this quote from Jean. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. And I guess if there are any questions, I'm sure that if you're a footwear designer, you're like me, super curious about what it's like at the farm. If you have questions about what that is, feel free to send them this way and we can talk about it. But I'm going to move on now to something that I've been working on recently. This is just a little side project. I was talking with my girlfriend, now wife, about creativity, about design, about the struggle for design, about the struggle to bring to life beautiful product. Anyway, as we were talking about this, she kind of challenged me to bring these ideas to life. I've always naturally been interested in working with students. I don't know where that comes from, but I've always naturally liked working with students. I've been involved with a lot of portfolio reviews. I've been on phone calls with young designers. I find it rewarding. I enjoy it. And so I thought, okay, well, this will be a little side project. It'll help me create or put my ideas to paper. It will help me work on my graphic design, and it'll be just a fun little project. So what I put together, and I don't know, maybe some of you have seen this if you follow me on Instagram, is I put together a booklet, a little digital booklet entitled "Want to Be a Great Designer? Read This: 25 Insights to Help the Young and Motivated Designer Level Up." And again, in the spirit of sharing, in the spirit of community, of design, and sharing inspirations, I hope that these 25 tips are helpful to those who have who have sought them out. I think it's always important to have a side project, and this was my side project for a couple of weeks. And so it's set up to just be a PDF that you flip through your phone, and little tips for the designer. And actually, we talked about this one, finding a mentor, but there's a few of them here: beginning the osmosis, being a sponge, being part of a team, and throw it away, which is something that I've already touched on. So this is something that I've been doing. And you know, one of the beautiful things about being a designer today is we can take ideas in our minds and we can put pencil to paper and we can create something out of nothing. And so that's always a fun exercise. I call it running little experiments. So if you guys are curious about these 25 tips, check it out on Instagram, and you can find your way to these guys. So this is an effort that I've been up to as well recently. So let's talk about some footwear. As Hector said, I'm an in-house footwear designer, senior footwear designer at Reebok. I'm on the performance product, training performance specifically. And I think that if any of you guys have ever seen any of my work, or if we follow each other on Instagram, this is probably what you know me for, is footwear. So let's talk about some footwear. And talk more design. So we'll transition maybe a little bit from me sharing what inspires me to hopefully some of my work inspiring you. And we'll talk a little about my perspective on design and the footwear process. So one of the things that I find myself returning to often is the idea of parameters. I think as designers, parameters, well, when I was a younger designer, I thought of parameters as being intrusions, hurdles that were problematic. As I've been through the process many times, I've learned to embrace parameters. Thriving within parameters, I think, is one of the hallmarks of great design, and is one of the hallmarks of a great designer. And so I always think that it's important to understand our parameters, to set the table with our parameters, and within those parameters, identify the opportunity and figure out how to succeed and create something beautiful and functional and worthwhile within those parameters. So I like this image because, and we've all kind of seen this sort of situation to varying degrees, but this tree has identified its parameters. Its parameters are these tiles that are in the sidewalk, and it knows that it can't dismiss the parameter. To dismiss the parameter it's just not an option. It has to adapt to the parameters, and it has to thrive where within those parameters. So I thought that this image was pretty cool because it does a good job of showing what that looks like. So I've highlighted, the tile as a P. This is the parameter. And so we should think about, as designers, how to identify parameters and succeed within them. And I think that's applicable for all design, but it's applicable in footwear design for sure. So that's something that I'm always keeping in mind. So in the footwear design process, and hopefully I do an okay job of walking you through what this looks like. And I just thought that maybe the best thing I could do today was to walk you through the footwear design process and show you different looks at that process. It'll of course be very simplified, but we'll give you guys a sense of what that's like. And of course, I have a general ID background. So, design is design no matter what the product is. So the first thing that happens in footwear is you get a brief. And I'm going to walk you guys through the design of the Legacy Lifter 2. So the Legacy Lifter 2 is an Olympic weightlifting shoe. And here you can see Tia Claire Toomey in the top right. She's a CrossFit athlete, Pan Am gold medalist. She, in this shoe, is wearing the Legacy Lifter 1, which I designed about 4 years ago. The Olympic lifting shoe is very particular to its use. It's very functional, has some unique characteristics. You'd never wear an Olympic lifting shoe anywhere else except to do Olympic weightlifting. So you get a brief. So that's how it starts. And the brief is with my team, we're on the same page. We've been doing this a few years now. So they come to me, they say, okay, we're going to do the new legacy lifter. And they kind of hand me the details. This is going to be the price point. This is how many pairs we plan to do. These are the correct characteristics of the shoe. And I take that brief, identify those parameters that we talked about, and start creating. This page kind of shows some of the mood imagery that was used during the process. I wanted to be inspired by the animal kingdom. And so with Olympic weightlifting being a very powerful sport, I wanted to look to some of the more powerful motions and movements in the animal kingdom. And, you know, a few things came to mind. I thought about the ape and the gorilla. I thought about the saltwater crocodile with its powerful jaws, the hippopotamus, but of course the great white shark as well, which is what floated to the top. The great white is this beautiful animal. So I wanted to look to the great white to be inspired, both from its function, but also from its visuals. So that was up on the mood board. Then we had some other graphics from previous seasons as well. And then some product that we were collaborating with other brands that was inspiring, it was cool. So this is kind of a mood board that was put together. And this one's very simplified, but always good to look outward, to be inspired visually, functionally. If there's a story that your brand is trying to tell, we need to be aware of that. Precedent product, of course, we need to be aware of that. Competitor product. So inspiration, parameters, kind of setting the table there. Unfortunately, I couldn't track down my sketches for the Legacy Lifter 2, but I just grabbed some sketches from another project. And but sketching is very important. Again, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you know that sketching is kind of something that I really enjoy. And I don't know that it was always that way though. And I think that it's important for us as designers to always believe that we can improve, always believe that we can level up. If something is not a strength today, it can be a strength tomorrow. Sketching is super important in design. And we'll all fit in a different place in terms of how we feel about sketching. Of course, there are designers like Dieter Rams who doesn't put a lot of value in sketching except to just think. And then there are other people out there, especially in the automotive industry, where sketching is like, you know, this superpower that we all are inspired by and gets everybody excited. But sketching for me is always a tool to explore, and it's a tool to think. And I would say that I transitioned into a very comfortable relationship with sketching and thinking just a couple years ago, really. I saw more just a tool to just kind of work through things, but not, it wasn't fluid. It wasn't the actual thinking that was happening. The skill of putting the pencil to the paper had its own hurdles. But through practice and through just putting more time in, I got to a place where sketching and thinking were almost synonymous. And so when you get to that place where sketching is just a process of thinking and trying new things and turning them over and you know, one idea leading to another, that's when sketching becomes something magical. And I reconnected with that just a couple years ago. So I've readopted and joined the sketching wagon as the tool of choice for exploration. And this page here is more functional. This is looking at different closures, but of course your pages can take on any kind of life as you decide to explore closures or outsoles or midsoles or proportion or color, any sort of build of a product. And I think all of us kind of know that. But of course it's an important component in the footwear space. And sketching, like I said, can take on all sorts of different visuals and you can use it in different ways. Again, this isn't a page taken directly from the legacy lifter process, but this was just taken from another project from a while back. And in this particular case, very two-dimensional, very flat. And I'm just looking at proportion, composition, breaking up space. And in this case, everything's so simple that it's more like, you know, if you're 20 feet away from the shoe, this might be what you see. But for this particular project, that was important. The simplicity and the feel from a distance. So in this particular case, just very simple and iterative. And I think that iteration is something that's really important for my process. Only through iteration can you feel comfortable with the decision that you make, at least for me. If, say, you know, I really like the first sketch I did, I still have to put in hours so that I'm confident that that first sketch that I did is right. And so also that I can prove to other people when I present, when I'm talking with the management team, to prove that I've done the work, that I'm confident in the decisions that I'm making. Iteration is super important. So after sketch exploration, we dive into Illustrator. So this is Adobe Illustrator, of course, and this was the lateral and medial view of the legacy lifter. People do their renderings in all sorts of different ways. Some people use a Cintiq, some people are in Photoshop. I like to do mine all in Illustrator. I think it eliminates some of the extra steps of going back and forth between Photoshop and Illustrator. So I think that clean Illustrator work is for me, very important. I like to keep it as accurate as I can, but I'm guilty of really screwing things up. It's funny, when you stare at the same thing for hours on end, I think some of you guys can probably relate. You're staring at something for hours on end, you go away, you come back and you're like, wow, that's hideous. So be careful about that and know that we're all guilty of it. But I try and be clean, try and get tight, because everything that we're doing at some point, this has got to be built. So the more clear it can be, the more understandable it can be, the easier it's going to be when it comes time to build product. So this is the lateral and medial view taken from what's called the technical pack or tech pack that we share with our factories. We might be looking at, so these drawings here are simply looking at blocking. So this is something that we like to consider in footwear. And with the same shoe, same design, same construction, same paneling, the shoe can take on a variety of looks. So that's something that I like to look at. Another page taken from the tech pack. I thought it might be useful for you guys to see what that might look like. So this is, my tech packs are pretty in depth. I would say probably anywhere from 10, 15 to 20 pages sometimes. I don't try and pack everything in on one page. I go bit by bit so that it's very clear for my factory. And this page is just a general overview of what's going on. So I'm going to show my factory a nice rendering, say, hey, this is the aspirational visual that we're going for. And then I'll go to a black and white line drawing where everything's very clear, do an overview of the callouts, and then I'll go into each of the details of the build, explaining it as best as I can, and get them going in the right direction. So this is a page as well from that tech pack. Of course, in footwear, there are three main parts to a shoe. There's the upper, that's the soft part with the laces. There's the midsole, that's the foam part. And then we have the outsole, and that's the rubber part on the bottom. So one thing that's kind of cool about footwear is you get a chance to work with soft goods with the upper, but then you get to work with molded materials for the bottom. And I find that really rewarding, where the upper is kind of, you know, it has a slouch, it has a stance, it's cut and sewn. The way that it sits without a foot in it is different than when a foot's in it. So it kind of takes on a little bit of a life of its own, and it's not done in 3D, so it's not exact. But then the midsole and the outsole, those are done in 3D, and so we get a chance to be really detailed, really specific, and they're molded parts. So if you detail it out just right, that's exactly how it's going to be. And so here's a view of some of the outsole explorations. And all of this, of course, all of this was preceded by a lot of sketching. Some of it messy, some of it clean, some of it just exploring proportion and composition. But here in Illustrator, once I kind of have a sense of what I want to do, I'll jump into Illustrator, do some quick little mock-ups like this to compare and contrast, print them out full scale, leave them on someone's desk, mark them up with notes. So I do, again, going back to that iteration part of design, looking at different views of the outsole. And then I wanted to show you a peek at, this is the tech pack for the outsole. So the tech pack for the outsole gets a lot more detailed and maybe a little more complicated, but it's important to be able to communicate clearly with your factory. And again, I find for me, just doing one thing at a time. So again, these are 2 pages put on to this one, but if you need 10 pages to really clearly articulate what's going on and what your vision is, it'll really help in the long run with whoever's executing your CAD, whether that's someone in-house or someone on the factory side. The clearer you can be here, the smoother the process is going to be. So I really try and take seriously this process of really articulating and getting everything just right so that the factory feels confident when they're making decisions and they're in 3D, they feel confident that they're doing what we're hoping for. Then we get into prototyping. So today we have the luxury, 20 years ago, I don't think they did, but today we have the luxury of rapid prototyping. It's an incredible tool that helps us work through that design much quicker, helps us iterate, see things in hand. It's a huge help. Of course, seeing in a sketch is very different than seeing it in 2D in Illustrator to scale, which is different when you see it which is much different when you can see it in hand. So it's a great tool to be able to get the 3D CAD files, print them out, review them, look them over, talk about changes that you want to make. So with our midsoles and outsoles, we're looking at RP parts often. Again, the cleaner the tech packs can be, the clearer the designer can be with the factory, the fewer rounds you go through with your RPs. And of course, the prototyping. The prototyping, it takes time. I'm getting better at it, but I'm an emotional roller coaster when we design. You're so excited about your designs, and then you see the first pullover and you think there's no way that you could ever fix that shoe. I promise that you can fix it. Prototypes are just prototypes, and prototyping is a process, just like sketching is a process. So, that first sketch, you'd never expect that first sketch to be perfect. You can't expect the first prototype to be perfect. So here's just a view of what some of those prototypes might look like. I really get into the details of the build of the product. I like cutting them open. What kind of foam are we using in the collar? What's the durometer of the foam in the collar? The sock liner top sheet. What's the friction of the sock liner top sheet? The factories are expert as well. They know so much, but it's really helpful to really get into the nitty gritty of what's going on. And I think that if you want to be proud of your product, that you really need to understand the process of how your product is made, whether it's shoes or something else. Understanding the process is super important. So ask questions, be a sponge, be like Leonardo Da Vinci, and every question that you have, insist on getting an answer no matter how crazy it might be. All of that will be really valuable and make you a great designer, and I'm still working on that as well. So here again, just a view of what some of those prototypes look like. And then that brings us to the final product. And if you've understood your parameters, if you've worked as a team, if you've respected the factory and you've respected your development team and you treated one another as expert and been on the same page and trusted one another and been as detailed as you can and been insistent on getting it right, then you'll get a product that you're happy with. You'll get a product that you're proud of. You know, looks are subjective. Some people might look at this product and they might not like it. I look at this product and I'm proud of where we got it. From a functional standpoint, there's a lot of details of this particular shoe that simplified the build, that made the build more elegant, that took into account the needs of the consumer in new ways. And I won't talk about all those details now, but very proud of the work from the factory, from development, and now the shoe's out there in the real world. And, you know, like, it's fun, but it's also nerve-wracking. You know, people react, they have opinions about it, they post YouTube reviews about it, and if they don't like it, they're gonna let you know, and that's all good. If you knocked it out of the park, great, people are gonna love you for it, and if you didn't, then that's just part of it, and you'll do it better the next time around. But I think that here with the Legacy Lifter, I think that we'll have some world records set in this shoe, so we look forward to seeing how it does over the next couple of years. And then you can see here from the 2D Illustrator drawings, I don't think I actually shared the final design, but here's a bottom view of the outsole. And one thing that, it's a little thing, but I'll nerd out about it, is I'm really happy with the way that we took that pill shape and created a visual of stability in the heel, which is what you want when you're Olympic lifting. When you're putting hundreds of pounds over your head, you want to feel that stability in the heel. That's where you drive into the ground through your heels up into the weight. So you really want to be stable in the heel. So I'm really happy with the elegant way, with these simple forms, that we're able to communicate stability in the heel, but then as that pill shape, those concentric shapes expand, they then transition into being flex grooves in the forefoot. And so we're communicating stability in the heel, flexibility in the forefoot, which is what you need in Olympic lifting. And so nerding out a little bit in the tiny little details of how that came together. And then just some of the details. A shoe, it can be, depending on what it is, it's almost like a lot of product design parts in one bigger product, depending on how you treat it, right? The outsole, you could treat that as a product in and of itself. The midsole, in this particular case, the D-ring and the strap, how they're working, how they're coming together. In this particular case, we made the strap adjustable in a very clever and new way. So every detail is important, and when all those details come together, as you all know, that's when a product really sings. That's when a product comes to life. So that is the footwear design process. I'll just kind of cap this off and be done presenting. And if you guys have questions, we'll go to that. But just a couple other snapshots of other product that's come out recently that I worked on. The Nano X. We were obsessive about comfort at every touch point and finish at every touch point, and we're really happy with the way that this has been doing in the market year over year, despite COVID, has done exceptional. So we're very happy with this product. And one thing that might be interesting for you guys to know is the footwear design calendar is about 18 months. So I started working on the Nano X probably 18 months ago, and it didn't come out until I think it was April maybe. And the Legacy Lifter, that's about the same. So it takes a while to get these things right, and then there's a waiting period for production. And then just a final little snapshot as well of the Froning, which is another product that came out recently this year. And this one page kind of shows you some of those thinking boards, the Illustrator drawing that was part of the tech pack, some of the prototyping, and then of course the final product. I hope that's been interesting. I hope I've touched on some things or answered some questions that you may have had. And I think from here, I will stop sharing and hopefully not screw anything up.
Looks like we're good to go. All right. Well, Jonny, thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing all that. We really appreciate it. Yeah, we're just going to dive right into some questions, and then we'll go from there. I know that on your Instagram, you show a lot of your own personal, work, a lot of your own personal sketches and things like that.
Yep.
And, I want to know if a lot of that personal work, a lot of those personal side view sketches of shoes, does that type of work also translate to a lot of the things that you do at work at Reebok? Because you have a very unique aesthetic when you're sketching the shoes. I don't know, it looks like it's done on Procreate on the iPad or something like that.
Yep.
And I don't know if that style translates to your day-to-day.
That's a good question. It's one that I've gotten a few times. And I would say the quick response is no. The stuff that I post on Instagram, it's an outlet. It's a way for me to be creative in an unrealistic way. If I ever had to wrap some of those designs onto a last, it would be a potential nightmare. But at the same time, the beauty of not being too restricted by reality is that you're free to find things that you wouldn't have thought otherwise. And so for me, Instagram has been a place where I've been free to do stuff that I wouldn't do at work, but it creatively inspires and creatively energizes the stuff that I do at work that has to be much more buttoned up, has to be much more real world. And in Instagram, I never have to take anything to Illustrator either. So I get to spend 20 minutes making something a little wacky, a little unique, and throw it out there. And that's a nice kind of outlet for me.
So what is your advice for students who are watching this Lens session and use Instagram, as a way to put up work? I do feel like Instagram sometimes there's a lot of pressure for people to, be really perfect. It's a very artificial platform. I think people feel pressured to put out, their best work, and sometimes, it's not used for experimenting like you're saying. What is your advice for some students who try to be perfect, right?
Yeah, I totally get that. I think that it's natural for us, if we ever put anything out there, we want it to be great work. We want to get praise for it. We don't want to get criticized. So it's totally natural. But I think part of being a confident designer and a comfortable designer is recognizing that perfection is not reality. The messy process is reality. The mess of it, the grit of it, the ugly stuff. That's where cool things come to life. And so I would say that if you're using Instagram as a platform to explore, and I'm a little bit of a rookie at it, to be honest, because I just, not until I think the end of last year, did I decide to be more active on Instagram with my work. So I would just say, be consistent, be authentic, buy into the process, because that's where great design stems from. And those who are and great designers who are looking to bring someone onto their team, they know that. They can identify the real deal process from a mile away. So be authentic, post your process, post the nitty-gritty stuff. If it is exploring worthwhile ideas, then those ideas will shine through. If it's an ugly sketch, the worthwhileness of the idea will shine through.
That's very good advice, and I wish that more designers were, kind of giving that type of advice out. I think everyone on Instagram, they kind of follow the popular aspect of it, right? They want to be liked, they want to be wanted, they want to be followed, things like that. So that's very good advice. Here's a question from Molly, and her question is: did you find it difficult to move from a different design field into footwear?
Well, I did it when I was a young designer.
Mhm.
So I definitely had the advantage of crawl, walk, run. I didn't get thrown into the deep end completely. I had a great team at Modaliti who was patient with me, who trusted in my abilities, but also I was a young designer. So I didn't have to transition. I didn't have to do a stark transition. But I will say that believing in design process, that's where it's at. If you have great design process, again, going back to those parameters, understanding the consumer, understanding the market, precedent product, etc. Good design process, I think, is applicable to any product. You can be doing a baby bottle one day and Olympic lifting shoes the next day. If you have good
Mhm.
process and you're willing to put in the time to really get in there and understand it, you'll be fine, I think.
All right. Now, you talked a little bit about respecting the other functions within footwear design. Can you talk about a time when you had to compromise a design to meet other functions requirements? And this is a question that is asked by Kaylin.
Um, yes, that has happened on multiple occasions. It happens often. I have felt lucky at Reebok. I feel like they've put a lot of trust in the train for team. So we haven't had big issues with that. But I think that that is part of the design. Again, I'm bringing it up again, and I apologize, but it's part of the process.
Mhm.
Um, there are, it's just a simple fact that there are parameters that are immovable. Um, there are managers who get to tell you what to do at different times, and you might not agree with it. And the truth of it is I think that, and I learned this recently, um, you don't have to agree with them, and you can still do what they ask, and you can still do it respectfully. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I hear your perspective. I understand what you're asking. I don't agree with it, but I'm going to execute it. I'm going to do it the best that I'm able. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, I don't know why, but I always have felt that we need to be in agreement. And we don't always have to be in agreement, but we should always try and be as respectful as we can, and recognize, depending on where we're at on the totem pole, you know, hey, I can push here, or hey, I got to relent, I got to compromise. It's how it goes.
Right. Um, Here's a very interesting question by Roberto. He's an industrial design student who wants to get into the sneaker design space. He wants to know, what aspect of design do you think are most important to master? For example, skills and programs that you use, in your day to day.
Yeah, kind of the hard skills. It's interesting, right? I guess I'll use an analogy of like snowboarding. Snowboarding doesn't become fun until you've mastered the board. Like, it's not fun at all. Downhill mountain biking, same thing. Not until you know how to use the board, not until you can trust your bike, does it become like an absolute riot, right? And design is very similar. He's asking about those hard skills. Design is not going to be that fun if I don't know any of the hotkeys in Illustrator,
Mhm.
or if my sketches just don't excite people. So those hard skills are very important, but once you've mastered them, then you get to be a creative, then you get to explore. The hard skills being sketching, for me, in my perspective, is super important. And that's something that we can practice every day, all day, no matter where you are, who you are. So that's a big one. And then I would say Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator. That's like my life, those two things, sketching and Illustrator. I used to use SolidWorks quite a bit before when I was doing general ID. I love SolidWorks. If you want to go that route, then become great at SolidWorks or your 3D package of your choice. But for me in footwear, sketching number one, Illustrator number two.
And I think once you've mastered, those skills and those technical aspects that you're talking about, design does become really fun. It just becomes like such a natural thing. You're not overthinking. You're not, it's just like oxygen. You're just breathing it. So absolutely great point. Going back to your sketches, do you have any sort of daily sketching routine?
I don't. I try and sketch a little bit every day. And I will say, there's sketchers out there who don't experience this, but like I experience atrophy so fast. Like if I don't sketch for, say that, because the design process of footwear is long, and you're only sketching at the front ends. Then you're getting into Illustrator. Then you're working with physical product. You're cutting stuff up. When the next season comes around 5 months later, like I'm like feeling like I haven't sketched in 5 years. Everything looks terrible. So I think that a routine is great. I think it's important to sketch every day. It does come and go if you're not practicing. But I just like to open up. I sketch and Procreate. I'm kind of obsessed with the 6B brush right now. And I just like to throw things down, stay loose. And I find that just that simple act of just like, even if it's 10 to 15 minutes a day, when it comes time to actually execute, I'm in a better position to start putting out explorations that are more worthwhile.
Okay. I have a couple of questions to ask, and then we can kind of wrap this up and then kind of go from there. So one question is, you mentioned that you had an opportunity to work with Mark Dole at Adidas. And I guess I might be a sneakerhead, who knows? I just have a bunch of shoes. For someone who really respects someone like Mark and the work that he does, was it surreal to work with someone like him, or was it just like any day at work?
Well, so at Reebok, I had a certain sense of how I kind of fit in with the design environment there. But to me, I was like, the Creator Farm, the Adidas Creator Farm, that's like an engine. That's a powerhouse. So when I got that opportunity, I'll be honest, I was pretty nervous. I felt like, I would say the other world-class experience I had was with Astro. And I kind of look back to that and I was like, I'm going to get thrown in the deep end. I'm going back into intern mode. Even though I was a senior designer, like I kind of felt like I was an intern again. But when I got there, I realized that the team there was amazing. Mark was inclusive. He was open. He was constructive. He was positive. I was surprised at the amount of time that he gave to me being someone new in their studio. Despite it being small, I was still surprised. So he really, and I mean, Dennis Dekovich was there as well. And Jean he's an amazing designer. So, but they just had a good vibe going on, and it was collaborative and it was open. And so that nervousness that I had, it went away quickly. Part of it was their welcoming nature of the studio. And the other part of it was that I realized, like, hey, I can hang with these guys. I can contribute here. The time and the effort and the work that I've put in elsewhere has prepared me to like, and so it was a dynamic of a few different things. But you asked about Mark Dolce in particular, and it was just a pleasure to work with those guys.
That's awesome. Well, that's really great to hear. And here's another question. Uh, what is something you do to stop and smell the roses?
Something that I do to stop and smell the roses.
I know you talked a little bit about reading, but is there anything else that you do?
I do actually like to smell roses. Walked by some flowers just today. I went on a little run. I try and run.
Mhm.
Um, I've kind of gotten out of that a little bit. I need to get back on the running horse. But I walked out past some flowers today, and I noticed the white and the pink and the blend and so I do like to slow down. I do like to be out in the air. I'm in Cambridge. There's beautiful things to see here with the Charles River. Um, so that's something I like to do. And then, yeah, I like to turn on an audiobook and learn from, the greatest minds in these books. I didn't grow up being a reader, but it's amazing that we can just, man, you want to learn about Leonardo da Vinci and learn about what he thought and what he thought about and the things that inspired him. Like, you can go and do that. So that's exciting and that's fun. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
It does. I appreciate it. And the last question I have here for you is I know you started out as an industrial designer. That's what you went to school for. And right now you're working in footwear. Um, if you didn't go to school for industrial design, is there another discipline that you would be doing right now?
Well, I was looking at in school, before I knew ID was a thing, I was looking at mechanical engineering and the creative side of advertising. So all three of those kind of fit. Um, I think that at this point, you know, I think there's a lot of interesting things in the entrepreneur space or in the business space. So part of me says, MBA, would that be interesting? I've taken some continuing ed classes in that space. Those guys are totally different than designers. But yeah, there's a lot of things out there. And I think that creatives, there's probably a bunch of different directions a creative could go and contribute, because I think the way that designers think, I think is really unique, and I think that it's really powerful. Um, so I think that any one of those other lanes would be exciting.
Well, fantastic. I really appreciate your time. I love your kind of student mentality that you continue to keep learning and educating yourself. And you're extremely positive and very motivating. I love that have this, you're kind of an educator at heart. And I hope that one day you are able to teach some courses or at least collaborate with us when we can help you with that. But thank you for your time. Your presentation was amazing. Thank you for those who joined us. This webinar, like I said before, is recorded, and we'll make it available for everyone to see and share. And Jonny, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope people found it worthwhile.
Absolutely, you bet. And for those who missed it in the beginning, Jonny did say that on his profile, he has an amazing kind of 25 um, almost like advice for students. And I actually, when you were presenting, I was looking through it and it looks awesome. So I'm very excited to share that with my team. I encourage you to go to his profile. When we make this video available, I'll link your social media platforms and then people can connect to you. So thank you so much and have a good evening, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.